Hello, everybody. You should be coming in with your sound off, so don't worry about trying to talk back. And your audio off. So we are having Tuleyome's Nature and You lecture series tonight. So my name is Bill Grabert. Thank you very much for coming. This is sponsored by Tuleyome, and Tuleyome is a nonprofit based in Woodland. We encourage people to get outside, specifically in the Berryessa Snow Mountain area, which is the area to the west of the northern Central Valley. So it includes the Berryessa Snow Mountain National Monument and the Lake Berryessa area. So we take people out on hikes, we do trail building, we actually purchase properties to preserve them. Tonight's speaker is naturalist, artist, and best-selling author, Obi Kaufmann, and I'm going to let him introduce himself, so thank you very much, Obi. Oh, one more thing I'm going to say. We're going to take questions as we go, and in order to do that, you need to use the chat feature. So if you're not familiar with Zoom, you have to go down to the bottom of the screen, and there's a little balloon there that says chat. And so you can just type in questions as we go, and we can ask questions during the presentation. So take it away, Obi. Thank you.
Hey, all right. Thank you, Bill. Hello, everyone. Hello, community. Let's start by making sure everybody please check that your video is off and your audio is off. That will make this go much smoother. All of your communication with me tonight will be managed by Bill, and we'll proceed through the chat feature in Zoom. So that is your job. But let me reinforce and echo one of Bill's main instructions there, which is please respond, think about, absorb, and reflect on all of the issues that I am going to expound upon tonight in the hour or so that I have you. And then, and in real time, you can then please write your questions in the chat box, and Bill, who's the only guy I'm actually looking at, will raise his hands if he deems it in his best interest to actually interrupt me mid-sentence, which I know sometimes can be kind of hard to do, and then interject. Give me those questions, give me those reflections, give me those observations, as it will, of course, enrich my own understanding of these very complex issues that I'm bringing up here tonight. I'm going to do a bunch of things here tonight. We are going to go on a wacky and beautiful journey across California's landscape. Of course, the main agenda I have tonight is to tell you about my new book. It's called The Forests of California, and it just came out 10 days ago, actually, was the publication date, and it debuted at number 6 on San Francisco's bestseller list, San Francisco Chronicle's bestseller list, paperback nonfiction. And this week it climbed up to number 4, and that does not seem to be slowing in momentum. So what we have here tonight in this community, oh man, that's not a word that really fits this, right? I mean, this is you've got me as a framed talking head, which is a lamentable position for me to be in, but alas, this is where we are. What we've got here in this community, this activated citizenry, how about that? Across California is a real audience for this kind of thing. And this kind of thing that I'm talking about is an entire shift, a transformational reassessment of many of the core issues that have traditionally, or in the past century, perhaps 2 centuries, have held our society, there's a word as loose as community, together at all. So we're going to try and unpack that statement over the course of the next hour. And I'm going to introduce you to, one, me, and two, my work, which I don't know if I can actually separate the two. So I am a painter. I am a watercolorist. I used to be an oil painter. In fact, I spent so many decades trying to figure out that business model of being a gallery artist. Couldn't figure that out until I finally got this idea in my head to take all of me, all of my art, and give it to the thing that I love most in this universe, which is the natural world of California. Now, I knew at the onset that I had to really clearly understand what voice I was going to be speaking with. Is this going to be an art book, or is this going to be a science book? Both have advantages, both have disadvantages with telling the kind of story that I want to tell. My father was an astrophysicist. He's been gone now for a couple of decades, but I still feel that I have this ongoing conversation with him, because while he made textbooks about astrophysics, in fact, they still use them throughout the University of California system. Dr. William J. Kaufmann III was his name. I do not make textbooks. I do make big, sprawling books about California nature, but I am not making a science book. And I'm very sensitive to what science is, and I'm very respectful for how massive the philosophical basket science can be towards not only solving so many of our human woes, and as it's done, as we've seen since the Industrial Revolution, of course, since the real activation of the scientific method in a popular way across the globe, but also some of the problems and some of its limitations, some of its pitfalls, especially some of those ideas that have reared their head in the form of policy that may or may not have been bad, false, or even just potentially even violent. So I am a painter. Let's go to the next slide here. The Forests of California is my third book. It is a field atlas. California Field Atlas. That was my first book, the California Field Atlas. That came out in 2017. This book, The Forests of California, is the second field atlas ever to be made. The genre that is the field atlas is one of my own invention. It is I knew that I needed, okay, watch what happens. I needed to make a new way of telling a story to describe the character of California, this place that I love and feel so much affection for and so much intimacy with, that hadn't been really explored yet. Okay, so I came up with this idea of the field atlas. A field atlas is not about the what of things. I would give that to the field guide. The what of things. What is this book? What is this painting? What is this door? This is the field guide to Obi's studio here, right? A field atlas is concerned with the how of things, how these larger forces coalesce, particularly across the field of reference that is represented by the larger metaphor that is California, right? I'm an artist. I'm very comfortable with the idea of the metaphor. The metaphor is the device that leaves the thing as it is, but turns it into something else at the same time. And I find the idea of metaphor to be very effective, especially when you're talking about ecology, which is a field of academic study that I am obsessed with. Although I am not an ecologist. I would be a naturalist. I would be an amateur ecologist. And boy, oh boy, is it a fun time to study that stuff. Okay, so the field atlas exists in a number of different worlds, realms, usabilities, whatever you want to say. The field guide is the thing that you take with you hiking. I take a number of field guides with me whenever I go hiking. I think I have a couple right here. Oh yeah, so this is the field guide to the Sierra Nevada by John Muir. A friend of mine. Jack is a brilliant artist and a biologist himself. That's we're published by the same excellent little publishing house, Heyday Books in Berkeley. It's been publishing books since the early 70s, and they're all about California. Anyway, you take Jack's book when you go hiking, okay? That will tell you all of the species. My book, my California Field Atlas, is for when you come back to the couch after the adventure and you are dreaming of where you are going to go next. Of course, that is a rather banal entrance to what I hope is a larger pathway and inroad into a greater thinking about what California is, what it has been, what it continues to be, and what it will be, despite the very successfully imposed urban veneer that we are closing up the last wild places of the planet with. So then the California Field Atlas came out in the fall of 2017, and it forever changed my life. I mean, I am not a father. I don't have any children. I don't know what having a child is like, although the California Field Atlas, to me, its publication represented a project so large, so massive, so meteoric to my own personal karma, my own narrative, that that my whole life will now be defined by everything that came before that and everything that came after that, much as I imagine either a birth or a death might actually be. So then, to my great surprise, it was a big hit. I toured the book up and down California, from Crescent City to San Diego, over to Fresno. My mom lives in Truckee. I went to school in Santa Barbara. California has always been my playground, and just bouncing it all over the state, it really has done well over these past couple of years. It's now in its 6th printing. So it continues to be popular. It started me on this whole thinking then that I can go deeper. And in fact, that is what I will be spending the rest of my days doing. California is robust, deep, beautiful enough such that I could make 100 maps of nature a day for the rest of my life and still not tell all the story there is to tell. So, I mean, we'll get into the origins of the California Field Atlas in a little bit. Right now, I want to describe to you where I'm going with it, okay? So I'm in contract right now with Heyday for 6 books totally. I've published 3 of them. I did the California Field Atlas, and then I published a little thin novel. Perhaps you've gotten it. I call it a novel as if there's characters and a plot. It's called The State of Water, Understanding California's Most Precious Resource. And that is about the single most altered aspect to our natural topography, the thing that we have done that in this state that rivals anything that humans have ever done with anything anywhere. And that is the infrastructure that includes the storage, conveyance, and usage of California's water resource in order to completely transform the nature of large swaths of the California topography itself, but also, but I mean, specifically, we've got this arid steppe that was the California's Central Valley transformed into the most agriculturally productive area in the world. A legacy that is now to be questioned as to its continued viability and resiliency into the future. We'll get more into that in just a little bit. In fact, I would like to examine the conditions, the ecological history of California that set up the valley for it to become that ultimately. I think the last point that I want to make there is that however awesomely we've transformed California's waterscape in the last 170 years since the gold rush, really most of it's happened in the last 90 to 100 years, even much less time than that. However awesome that entire project was and is, how it will transform again in the future over the same amount of time, given all of these stressors, given all of these factors that are at play, will match that original transformation. However much we've done it, however much our transformation of it has been a success, it will only be matched again by how it will transform into the future. So I had to figure out the state of water. I had to get that little water book out before I could go back quite literally into the woods and make my third book, which is The Forests of California, which is, at 650 pages, quite the brick. It is unlike the California Field Atlas, which is, several hundred hand-painted maps of how nature kind of works around the state towards this idea of geographic literacy, right? This empowering tool for the citizenry. The Forests of California takes that one step further. I only discuss the arboreal habitat of California, and most of that frame of reference occurs within the boundaries, the political boundaries of the national forests themselves, all 23 sectors of them that exist inside California. And that's not ranger districts, that's larger portions of designated national forests, which accounts for almost nearly half of the total square miles of California's land area. I also go into the national parks, which is another big one, but we're talking really about arboreal habitat here. And I'm after a few drafts of this book actually took me twice as long to make as my first book, The California Field Atlas. You will see that there are hundreds and hundreds of cited sources in the back of the book, which leads me to discussing the greater idea of what my voice is and how art and science actually mix. We'll get into that in a little bit. I just want to finish my trajectory here about the thought, because I am in the middle of writing the Game of Thrones of California nature. These are going to be big books that describe some place that is more fantastic, more full of epic adventure than anything made up, any made up world could ever be. Edward Abbey was so correct when he said there's California and then there's reality. I am full of all kinds of superlatives, and it's not just talking about what we find across the California floristic provinces being like, the oldest, we have the oldest tree. It's not just talking about the tallest tree. It's not just talking about the biggest that, the smallest that, or whatever, the greatest elevation difference from Mount Whitney to Death Valley in the lower 48. California's natural world is full of superlatives. I've got so many more to tell you. This is a place of world-class biodiversity. This island, California, as its floristic province, certainly is an island by all evolutionary standards, where you have on its east side this incredible wall that is the Sierra Nevada, North America's longest contiguous mountain chain, and then on everything on its west, influenced then by this Mediterranean climate, one of only 5 places in the world where this happens like this, thanks to a benevolent placement of latitude and current really across the eastern Pacific Ocean that has remained relatively stable for the last 5-6 million years or so, since the late Miocene, really, where California has resembled its current tectonic configuration. Anyway, I'm in love with California. Can you tell? I've got 3 more books. And so I'm going now to discuss The Coasts of California. That's the book that I'm presently writing that will be here in 12 short months. Lament. And then The Coasts of California will be followed a year after that with a book called The Deserts of California. And then the last book, the 6th book, will bookend the state of water, and it will be called The State of Fire: How, Where, and Why California Burns. And that will be September 2023. Yes, 2023. I will then take a year and walk around California. I am a backpacker. I am a wild man, and I am, after this, what do you call it, pandemic, this season of quarantine, this terrible COVID, I am a tamed and broken man. Oh gosh, and then you pile the wildflowers. I wish I was under a pile of wildflowers. You pile the wildfires on top of that conflagration and of circumstances, and you get an Obi that is going to leave everyone and everything for a year in 2023 after I get all these books done. Of course, my whole plan then is to do a walking book tour. I'm going to start in San Diego in April, and then I'm going to finish, after threading my way up the Sierra Nevada and coming down the coast, I'm going to finish a year later, April 2024, in the same spot. So if you want to come with me, or if you want to join me on a leg, I would welcome that. It is going to be an epic walking book tour, and I'll begin to post my itinerary and be interviewing folks who want to join me. I would love to have you along. So the California Field Atlas, we can get into what the character of California that I'm actually describing in the book, right? So there's temporal aspects, there's elemental aspects. Let's talk about the temporal aspects for a moment. I want to describe an eternal character of California. At least eternal, of course, is a clumsy word, I suppose. But at least to my mind, the target of my affection, this California, what character of it has always been. I mean, you can trace the genetic heritage of these mighty conifers, the tallest, oldest, biggest trees in the world, to the beginnings of botany, really, when seeds are figuring out how to disperse themselves at all. They are all in this larger tree family called the gymnosperms, and a gymnosperm simply means naked seed. It doesn't have any pollinators at all. So in that regard, these trees that still exist with us have a genetic legacy that goes back about 300 million years, which is a good bit of time, a good bit of distance. I mean, okay, so those characters of California like that, as an example, that have always been. And then that character of California I wish to explore is that character that still exists. Okay, even in this time of anxiety, restlessness, when we sense in our bones a deep malfunction somehow of our human ecology, of our connectivity. Ooh, there's a word that will be coming up again and again. Of our connectivity, not only towards the habitat in which we exist, the nature that surrounds us, but the connectivity between us as species, as between us as members of the same species at all. That character of of California that exists now, despite our continued exploitation and extraction of natural resources and, quite frankly, one another. What still exists? Well, I tell you that although every single one of our natural landscape types across California, all of our habitat types, every single one is either threatened or endangered across, at whatever scale you're talking about. We can go into the very small, we can look at little vernal pools, we can go into the very large, we can talk about old growth patterns across national forests, which I do at length in the book. Every single one is either threatened or endangered. Alas, our extinction rate is very low. Less than 1%, as a matter of fact. Now, we've lost some beautiful creatures, some megafauna that including that gorgeous creature that we put on our flag, the California grizzly. But with a less than 1% extinction rate. Now, another corollary, you have to just get used to me tonight as I go off on these different tangents, because it's very important to have all these footnotes. The extinction is a very hard thing for a scientist to declare. Extinction itself is a very complex process. It is a mode. It seems to be something that all species eventually attain. That is known to be fallible in some ways. When you say something is extinct, then it comes back. It doesn't. There was faulty research there, wasn't there? But the way species become extinct is often not just because there's not too many of them. Sometimes it becomes genetic bottlenecks. Sometimes it's because of disastrous events. I mean, I'm thinking now about the worst fires that we've seen in modern history across California, still burning right now, tonight. Okay, so what character of California has always been, what character of California is, and what character of California will be after all this? And that is something that my mind goes to a lot, not with gloomy thoughts. These are not gloomy thoughts thinking of a future California that is rewilded, that is turned into something else, but rather a California that is reset and transformed from the momentum of its own resiliency and its vitality. You'll find in a lot of my books, well, one of the main characteristics of a field atlas at all, in my mind, is the absence of roads. If you want a road atlas, go get a road atlas. That's a terrible way of telling the story of the land. I mean, the story of the land that you're telling through a road atlas is one of fragmentation between habitat places, right? I mean, it's the paving of a strip of land between one arbitrary human locale and another is not an ecological way of looking at things, or not. It's just not a story that I want to tell. I'm more concerned with, you'll find in my books, for example, like in the field atlas, there's dozens of portraits of rivers. Okay, the Yuba River. The Three Forks of the Yuba River began flowing between 6 and 10 million years ago as the young Sierra Nevada, much smaller than they are now, averaging about 4,000 feet. They began to raise and lift on their eventual ascent to becoming the tallest peaks in the lower 48. That water that you go and touch in the Yuba River, that blue line, has been flowing for nearly 10 million years. And you know what it's going to do for the next several million years? The same thing. long after all of these roads that I was just lamenting and going on about have returned to the dust from which they are made. And that to me is not a gloomy thought at all. It's in fact almost a context of hope that we can start talking about. Now, I don't mean the word hope as any sort of like flippant thing. Hope being perhaps, I hope it rains. I hope it rains this year. That's like, okay, good luck with that. Hope in my context is an actionable tool, something by which we are motivated to go forward at all. One of my favorite guys to listen to is Neil deGrasse Tyson. I think that he's a fascinating individual to listen to, and also he reminds me of my dad, the astrophysicist. It's really sort of a amusing and endearing thing to listen to Dr. Tyson talk. But one of the things he was talking about is the nature of optimism. And he was talking about his astronaut friends. He himself is an astrophysicist and not an astronaut, but he was describing their temperament. And in order to be an astronaut, you have to be a very optimistic person. And I like that idea. I like that idea that it's sort of like it's cooked in to the vocation, to the profession itself. It's like, it's going to be okay. We're going to be okay. And I think that we could all use a dose of that, because what we're doing right now? We are pioneers in a new frontier that's going to affect, the new frontier of climate breakdown, which is like what I call it in the book, right? The as opposed to climate change. I think it's a little bit more genuine term and more indicative of what actually is happening across the region, the nation, the globe, 3 scales of reference, if you will. And a big network is then emerging from that. So the state of water, understanding California's most precious resource, the state of water is, the subtitle of which is Understanding California's Most Precious Resource. And of course, the intimation there is pretty obvious that, water is then our most precious resource. Of course, after touring the book for the past year, talking to fishermen in Eureka, the Klamath, talking to farmers in Fresno, talking to people in the high desert of the Mojave, talking to people in San Diego, I found that water isn't our most precious resource. Our most precious resource, the thing that is in more dire value than the material that we have so ingeniously managed to transport around the state, the water itself. The most precious resource then, of course, is our own ability to not only talk to one another with a shared sense of values, but to trust each other enough with the story that we are telling. So what I have learned from that trek that informs all of my work is then, okay, so I'm not out to make an argument. I actually think that all the arguing is done. And that is one of the great opportunities, one of the big eyes that is opening right now, especially as we watch the largest fires in our state's history rage on. The great opportunity then is to just get to it. I don't care how you got here. I don't care what you think. And in that way, we're kind of liberated to be unified under this. And I know that we are still experiencing so much trauma and so much frustration over all of these things as we're realizing this moment of reckoning, not only with the natural world, of course, but we can't have environmental justice without racial justice. It doesn't work independently like that. It's a big networked system. And that's the story that I'm telling. And that story is not only the only story I can think of to tell, but I think it's the most important story there is. And so I start with the state of water. You know, all my books begin with these grand presumptions about, you know, okay, so this is what I've got. This is how I take on this subject matter. And in the state of water, I open with this idea of rights and responsibilities, because I've learned, and I learned real quick, when you're talking about water in California, you're not talking about water at all. You're talking about worldview. And so I think what is freedom? How about that for a big American question? What is freedom? You know, I hear a lot of people think that freedom then is freedom is doing what I want. And I have to stop you. I have to stop you and frankly correct you. I believe that would then be a child's definition of freedom. A functional freedom in a society is the agency to attend to your social responsibilities without some sort of government entity telling you what those responsibilities actually are. That puts us all in the same boat together. And that's a definition of freedom that doesn't include the word rights. And that's a different kind of perspective, and I'm all about the different kind of perspective. We will explore a few more of them going on. So what are all, if we're all in the same boat together and we're trying to find this unified story to tell, what is that story? Well, let's go back into history, and then let's take a deep breath and figure out our larger context then for humanity in this place. And that's a fun story to tell, you know, that as we can look backwards 200 years ago and see a California that's much different than a California 200 years from now. We can go all the way back. Let's go all the way back to when humans showed up in California, between 10 and perhaps even as early as 40,000 years ago. There was a long stretch of time when Beringia was a place connecting Alaska and Siberia. And humans can walk, can't they? Humans cannot walk anything. We cannot walk a horse. It's what we've got. It's indeed what made us one of. We'll talk about. I love to talk about human evolution. I talk about it all the time because I think it's important to figure out who and what and where we are and how that will transform, translate, and inform where we're going. So, at the time of human settlement, there were over 20 or so species of herbaceous mammal, all of which weighed more than a ton, grazing on all of this, this flora across this floristic province that have all of, and it evolved to do that. Of course. So these. Can you imagine? Can you imagine the largest camel in the fossil record? Can you imagine mammoth among California bison, California horses, enormous sloth? They were all here chomping away. And then you couple with that, of course, the land of lightning. And you get a particularly resilient forest that is used to being disturbed in a particular way, eaten, perhaps grazed right down to the nubbin. You have to, if you are a plant, to survive in California, as having evolved here since remember I was talking about how California became an island. A island is, connected by land but separated because of the mountains. How the entire province evolve together under this regime of change and disturbance. Humans come in, disrupt the whole thing. Of course, we're looking at some climate changes there too, past what geologists call the glacial maximum. When you could walk from San Francisco to the Farallon Islands, there was that much water captured on a global level within the glacial networks of the world that the sea level was several miles out in many places, where that was feeding grassland steppe for the mammoth. And then, of course, of the next 10,000 years, what we have is perhaps several 100,000 Native Americans spread out over this rich place, evolving a technology of interaction with their ecology that was about fire. Something that we didn't understand. Gosh, I was reading today about Aldo Leopold, one of my heroes when I was young, wrote San Cami Almanac, the pioneer of the land ethic and all. But he is on record as saying, of course, the savage's notion of fire management is absurd. And he wrote that not 100 years ago. We have a lot of reckoning to do with how we manage the land. In fact, as I said before, that our water infrastructure will change so much in the next 100 years, that just might pale in comparison to how our policies change toward wild land management and policies towards the natural world at all. This is where I grew up, down there in the lower left hand of the screen there. Maybe you can see my my cursor bouncing around. That'd be Mount Diablo. I know that tonight I am talking to the folks at through Tuleyome, organization that I am so proud to have been associated with for so many years. I was there in 2015 when Berryessa Snow Mountain National Monument was designated as such, and I'm always looking to assist them in any way that I can. So I guess what I'm talking about is like the strange energy that I'm feeling right now doing a virtual book tour. I wish that I was in a room with you all tonight and we were actually in the active, process of creating community, of me looking into your eyes. I think that's very important as, a member of this species. There's something magic that happens there that cannot be conveyed on any platform with a monitor, especially under the guise of something like a social network. My God, here's my father's book, Black Holes and Warped Space-Time. So that would probably be a point to talk about the difference between science and art and how they mesh in a conciliant way to then present the unity of all knowledge. I am not writing textbooks. I'm not going to leave you alone with the analysis. My books are full of cognitive bias, and I'm proud of it. And it's a necessary ingredient, in fact, to the story that I'm telling. And that story that I'm telling, of course, is meaning. How about that for a big word? I will give truth, or objective truth, particularly, to the physical sciences. It's what they do so well. It's science ultimately becomes the sword from the stone that we have pulled to. That was E.O. Wilson said that one, the man who's responsible, among other things, but one of the first to use the word biodiversity or sociobiology, a number of these words. We're our greatest living naturalist. Science then becomes the sword from the stone that we pull in order to successfully understand our cosmos in a way that no other species ever had. Although we still don't understand the nature of consciousness, it can be told that in this very small section of geologic time, really in the past 100,000 years, since what anthropologists have told us is the cognitive revolution, when we started inventing fiction, when we started making visual art, when we eventually invented things like money, you know, these stories that we tell each other that made all of this possible, right? That is really nature waking up to itself. And that is a very interesting ontological story to tell. How do we know what we know? Well, there's two ideas, the science and these humanities, right? And I put all the arts in like these humanities, the thing that we've got. Theoretically, if we forgot everything we know tomorrow, everything in the world is just gone tomorrow. How about this for a thought experiment? What would we would be able to remake is our sciences. We would be able to learn that all again. What would be different in form and structure is the stories that we told around those sciences, and those would be the humanities. And so I believe that if we bridge these two together, always in evolving in a new and dynamic ways, always repositioning and re-establishing the story within an ever-emerging economy, we just might build a human ecology that's resilient to what is coming. And what is coming, my friends, is a tough time. I'm sorry to report that, but I don't think it comes as a surprise to any of you. We are already in the bottleneck. There is so much momentum that we are already pushed towards with these feedback cascades, really, of climate breakdown, invasivity, development, pollution. I mean, you can call it HIPPO, right? We've got habitat, invasiveness, pollution, overpopulation, overharvesting. That'd be HIPPO. And of course, climate change is the umbrella over them all. But remember, hope is the actionable item here. We are still inside the bubble of the miracle, my friends, with a low enough extinction rate that implies, as yet, all of the pieces are still on the board. What a gift that is. Deeper ways. I thought I came up with a bunch of different thought experiments to structure the book. Finally, this was one that I largely abandoned when I based on my hold on a second. Hey, hon, could you get that from Gordy, please? My dog is using the squeaky toy. It's distracting me. In any case, this was one of my experiments that I let go. I structured the work differently towards the in later drafts, where I moved from spatial contextualization of the habitats, which was, you know, talking to my biology friends, misguided and simplistic misguided and simplistic at best, downright wrong at worst. I still need to put that one in the cooker for the next 20 years, so we'll see how that goes. I eventually organized the books with the application of 3 different habitat concepts that you can imagine as 3 concentric circles. The middle one, call it A, would be tree associations, and that is generally the way that on any given site, trees of different species will if they're riparian, if they're montane, if they're desert, however they are, whatever elevation they're at, and whatever time frame they evolved into together, and what are their local environmental conditions, begin to describe circle B, which is habitat type, how they then how they then attract an understory of different other kinds of shrubs and smaller plants, and all the accompanying wildlife, setting up the levels of trophism that then lead to a homeostasis and an equilibrium. And then, of course, the last big habitat, the last big concept, ecographic concept that I employ is see the forests themselves. Whether or not we're talking about what kind of habitat, what kind of forest types do you find in the Klamath Forest, as opposed, of Northwest California, or as opposed to the Cleveland National Forest of San Diego County. Very different kinds of forests, each unique, bold, and as beautiful as the rest. We have a number of decisions to make. We have a number of ideas to talk about. Two of the main characters in my book that I propose, well, I sort of bring my voice to join in a larger proposition of what makes forest health happen at all within a larger adaptive cycle, is two characters, the salmon and the beaver. These two types of animals, there are several different subspecies of beaver, there's several different species and subspecies of salmon and anadromous fish across the state, do something very special that no other creature does. And they've been gone. Before the gold rush, there was another rush. There was the fur rush, and that was taking the beaver out of the state. It was estimated the time of the gold rush that there was, in fact, 15 million beaver in California. It was like on every water course you had 1 or 2 beaver per kilometer of creek or river. And what they do in that particular way, even Richard Dawkins talks about it in the extended phenotype, when he talks about this is an expression of their genotype, really, that they make these beaver lodges, these beaver dams, these terraces that interact with the watershed in such a way to create factories of biodiversity in a way that mitigates water, its storage, and its conveyance across the forest body in a way that artificial human dams don't. You add to that then the incredible nutrient dose that is the salmon climbing up the one beaver terrace to the next in its mission to fulfill its life cycle, its anadromous life cycle. After returning from the sea, it goes to the headwaters of its own birth to then lay its mortal body down. And when we're talking about in the Sacramento River here, the Shasta Dam here, historically up this narrow ravine twice a year, spring and winter, Chinook salmon specifically number in the hundreds of thousands, people-size salmon, enormous fish going up these terraced watercourses into the very depths of the forest where they deposit their body, spawn and die, and then metric tons, hundreds of thousands of metric tons of nitrogen, phosphorus, calcium, then comes down in the floods, of course, to cover the Sacramento and San Joaquin Valley, leaving all of this Pleistocene alluvium, perfect farming soil for the humans to come. But of course, now, when we built the Shasta Dam, we built the Freant Dam on the San Joaquin River, we said explicitly in their inauguration, when we opened the dams for agricultural water usage or urban water usage or for flood mitigation, a natural process that operated in many ways not unlike fire in pre-colonialized California to cleanse and to disperse nutrients across the body of California's natural world. We said specifically we were saying goodbye to the salmon. We knew we were doing that 70 years ago. And yet, they're still here. It's a miracle. They're critically endangered. There are no laurels to rest on, and it will take far more than just our current attitude. Really, we need a better story. We need, gosh, I hesitate to say it, but might we need catastrophe in order to let us know really what is the value of our mismanagement? What is the value of our, what is intrinsic value over utilitarian value? When all of the policies of our forest management are aimed towards commodification, aimed towards the resource that is, for example, timber, as they have been over the past 100 years. And the forest management left to logging companies, building roads and culverts. That's the only thing going on in there. And then we've got, coupled with fire suppression, which is largely and explicitly a historical tool of colonial violence. Where does that put us now? I don't need to tell you what you see in the news every day. But again, I want to point to the miracle. The miracle, the opportunity that all of this terrible catastrophia presents to us is transformation. We can reset like the forests that are on fire now. What if we transitioned from necessarily some sort of linear capitalist system, right? Where you move from production to consumption and then you throw it away, disposability, to a circular economy. There is so much money to be made there. My goodness, what if we instituted and built a new labor force, unionized the young with the tools of science to become restorationists? Actually give them a prevailing wage and set a new course for California to engage its forested worlds, to build up its natural resiliencies. We all stand to profit from that in ways that are not about utilitarianism, but actually come from an ethical philosophy of intrinsic value. I mean, we're across the world. We're already finding nations experimenting with, for example, legal personhood for rivers, a river's right to flow free, clear, clean, and cold. And it's not about you and your business. It's about your granddaughter's ability to live here in this place in a clean environment. Isn't that what we care about? Because it should be. Because this is how we get into a realm of abundance, and we leave behind the myth of scarcity that our current economic system demands of us. And that's a very hopeful thought. It's going to take a lot of work. I mean, you have to start thinking about, for example, the adaptive cycle. What is the adaptive cycle? You have to have a whole new relationship to fire. Fire is not the enemy. In fact, when you start thinking like this, climate change isn't the enemy. Climate change is not the enemy. Our entire attitude, our way of thinking about our place in the natural world then becomes the enemy. Fire can be a gift and a tool. It's part of the way the forest works. It needs it. Right now, when you leave it to the forest companies, when you leave it to the timber companies, you get all of these trees together. My goodness, they're in the old growth forest, and every tree association has an old growth type, a behavior that is characteristic of a larger assemblage of ecosystem services and functionalities. And I go through each one of them in detail in each of the forests in this book, The Forests of California. And in, like, for example, the ponderosa pine old growth forest, you might have between 6 and 60 trees per acre, okay? So that's not a lot of trees, big trees, right? Because remember what fire does. Fire takes out the small stuff, but leaves the big stuff. Logging does exactly the opposite, takes out the big stuff, leaves the small stuff. So then right now you've got these trees choking on each other in these dangerously infirm, stressed conditions where you have 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 trees per acre. Stressed, all competing for the same amount of groundwater, all competing for the same amount of nutrients that there was there before. But then they're stressed, and then these, you know, the native boring beetles that are just doing their thing are like, hey, look at all this food. And then they go nuts. All of it's exacerbated by just a slight uptick in aridity and temperature. It's not going to get better before it gets worse. You know, I mean, we've seen over the past 10 years the biggest forests die off, and the amount of trees ever that we think, you know, in historical times. This is really only 170 years. Okay, so there's more trees now in California than there ever has been. You know, you see those bumper stickers sometime. We need more trees. Actually, no, we don't need more trees. We got plenty of trees. What we need is healthy forests. That is where quantifiably superior numbers of carbon sequestration actually attain what we're looking for in the to restrain then the potential catastrophic results of climate change run away, which exists in many models, from a degree increase in Celsius of between 1.5 and 4 to even 8 degrees Celsius by the end of the century, which would be too devastating to think of. It's not that it would be nice if we did this. It's that we have to do this. Oh, here's that habitat circle that I was talking about before. So we've got Alliance, Habitat, and Forests, and this is just a straight up page from the book. I go through all of the different kind of stressors that are affecting our forest ecosystems right now. And I think one of the things that I'd like to use this slide to just talk about for a little bit is biological dark matter, which is the mycorrhizal mat under your feet. I want to tell you really quick about mushrooms. What time we got going on here? I could just keep going. It's 8:04. Bill, how we doing? Can I keep going? Are we having fun? Are you having fun? Nobody's falling asleep yet? If you're falling asleep, you can,
You can keep going.
Okay, thank you. Because I would really love to open it up for questions and stuff too. And also, friends, now that you've listened to me talk for an hour, I would really like to invite you to email me also. So my email is coyoteandthunder, 3 words spelled out, coyoteandthunder@gmail.com. And give me your sincerest reactions, and give me your give me your deepest questions. I love them, and please tell me where I'm wrong. That'd be great too, because I want to get this story right. I'm here for you. Want to foster unity in this community, and I'm lonely and I'm waiting for your email. I don't know if there's any way I'm going to get back to you in any timely manner, but I will read your email. Anyway, let's talk about fungi, because fungi, the English say fungi. We don't really know what to do with fungi. It questions the very nature of taxonomic biology at all. The more we look at how lichens work, and a lichen, of course, if you don't know, a lichen is a algal biont. There's a plant part that does photosynthesis, and a fungal biont, another part that is able to access nutrients that plants aren't able to. And together, are they two things or are they one thing? It turns out that lichenizing, which is a process that began, get this, over 1 billion years ago. It was the fungi that established the terrestrial world such that plants could then come up onto land from the sea. The numbers are astounding. And watch this. I just want to walk you through this a little bit, because when you really start to think about what makes a forest, you realize that it's not all of those pretty green things poking up from the ground. No. All the carbon is in the ground. Like when you pick up a handful of dirt, a handful of good soil, there are more microbes in there than there are people on the planet, maybe more than people who have ever lived. It's an astounding number. And so these fungus, these little strands of mycorrhiza that are really connected through this stuff called hyphae, which are little tendrils that wrap around every root. And it could just be, and this is emerging science, that the rhizome, the rhizosphere, everything under the ground, that is where fungi reign. And there's this network that connects the whole forest. Okay, so the trees give the fungus their sugar, right? That's from the greatest magic trick ever evolved, right? Photosynthesis, turning light into energy. The fungus receive the sugar while they supply chemical nutrients to arboreal life. And that's standard thinking. Of course, it gets much more complex from there. There are networks upon networks. And so when I was talking about the hyphae before, like how much of it there actually is down there, you have, if you were to take that same clump of dirt and you were to line up all of the hyphae in one big long line, it would go for kilometers. If you were to take all of the fungus from the top 10 centimeters of the soil around the planet and connect all the hyphae together, it would be the distance of the galaxy. If you were to take all of that hyphae, I love these statistics. If you were to take all of that hyphae growth and its retreat and its growth and its expansion over just 30 years, that same amount all over the globe, 10 centimeters deep, and you were to iron it out, it would be half the size of the known universe. It would be billions of light years across. And that is how much life there is on this planet right now. And that is just in the top 10 centimeters of soil. So it just, and the nature of that connection challenges everything we know about ecology and botany and who we are. There's more microbial life in you than there is human life in you. So what are you? Well, you are a connected forest yourself, which is gets again to the metaphor that brings me to these things, these ideas of what beauty is and our place and our connection to this bigger story. This is how I began the Forest of California, with an idea of getting back to that older philosophy of that I was beginning to break upon there, that the Forest of California presumes that the intrinsic value of biodiversity outweighs the capital value of its dismantlement, and that by conserving the resource mechanisms of habitat biogeography, we protect the natural systems of resiliency that human society depends on. I'm just trying to really nail that down into a really efficient sentence that becomes a rallying cry that gets me up out of bed in the morning and then puts me to bed at night after a long day's work. But breaking that down is a long process. Okay, so as I begin to wrap up here tonight, I would really like to just tell you a story about the power of policy and the power of good thinking and the power of our collective will. I mean, when I started backpacking in the 1980s, you know, it was sometimes in the Mendocino forest, sometimes in the Big Sur coastal forests, I felt like a sharp pain that I carried around with me, that somehow nature itself was something that I had missed, that it was gone and it was over, and from here on out was like the long defeat. There were no condors, there were no elk, there were no otters, there were no whales. This is only 40 years ago. And yet now all of those species are coming back in the forests because of good efforts, because of what we're doing. Now everything is still critically endangered, but we have seen that by good policy, we can recover some of these things. In the next 10 years, we're going to be fundamentally changing our nature, the story we tell ourselves about our arboreal world, and how we can affect it and how it affects us. We can have all we want. We can have these 15 more million people come to California in the next 10 years, as they are saying. As the numbers look like, it certainly shall be. We will make our table longer, and they can come here, and we can figure this out. We can figure out how to live in the wildland-urban interface. It's not that impossible to imagine. And we have our best minds working on it. Okay, so now I'm just going to talk about Walker Ridge for a little bit, because you guys are locals. If you don't know about Walker Ridge, this is a patch I designed with the California Native Plant Society. This is my map from the book of the Berryessa Snow Mountain National Monument, and it has taken a beating over the past few years, hasn't it? My goodness. Well, you know, it always takes a beating. Check out this map. This is one of the maps from Bob Schneider's new book. This is Lake Berryessa, and this is the history of fire, really, right, from the last 60 years around Lake Berryessa. Look at that. Come on. Like we're gonna build a massive wind project. This is the wind project. This is the border of the national monument, and these are areas of critical environmental concern. And so now, you know, we're set up to sort of with these false choices that we have to think of green energy or we have to think of the environment. This is incredibly sensitive territory for a wind project that will supply about the energy equivalent of 6% of San Francisco's power for a year, you know, which is hardly a profitable equation on so many levels. Now this project, green energy, right? So it's something that we should talk about. They're talking about erecting 48 wind turbine generators, 600 feet tall, right above Indian Springs Reservoir. It was supposed to get done by the winter of 2020, but these things never happen on schedule. I'm opposed to this for a number of reasons. This will be destructive for this. There are wildflowers here that are endemic to this region, meaning they live nowhere else. And fundamentally, I believe that there are better sites. If we're going to do bladed wind generation technology at all. Now, we do have a mandate from the governor to go carbon neutral in the next 20 years. And I think that's fantastic, and I'm all about that. But at what cost? It's a very interesting discussion. We're also talking about, on the other end of the monument, taking out Scott Dam and reimagining the Potter Valley complex, which will free the Eel River from headwaters to mouth, and one of our best bets for reestablishing salmon populations in this part of the state and across California, really, because it's a very viable population. And now these are very sensitive, complicated issues, and I'm not coming out with a argument meant to disenfranchise or to turn anyone away. What I am here to do is to conceive of a better story, that we have other solutions that don't involve destroying habitat for eagles, which this one does, or how about this map that we're looking at right now is from the energy report itself. It's available as a PDF online. It's a 124-page report, and this is the only map that talks about nature at all. And you see this mild colored topography right here that goes through most of the project area. What if that was red? I mean, that's chaparral. That's going to burn. And these things are going to burn. Where was that other map? Come on, like where is this map in their environmental report? Why are we not showing that? Why is that not part of our decision-making process? And I want to know more about the phenology of the plants around there before we decide to put a major infrastructure development on the border edge of our national monument. What is worth what is a question to ask ourselves again and again. You know, Silent Spring kicked off the environmental revolution, and now, since really the early 1990s, there hasn't been a lot of movement in the environmental movement. I mean, what I would say is that as a social movement, the environmental cause has transformed so much that you're seeing real growth, real progress, as they say, in grassroots systems like the land trust movement or the sunrise movement. How about that? Give it to the kids, Extinction Rebellion. They're all there too. What we are not seeing is a golden age of environmental legislation like we saw in the early 1970s, the Clean Water Act and the Endangered Species Act, following, of course, the Wilderness Act. And those were interesting ideas, but not enough for what we need to actually realize and acknowledge the miracle, to monopolize and take advantage of the opportunity that we are inside right now. And I put it to you right now that we have the opportunity. And that is a piece of hope that I think that I am going to end on tonight. So how we think about the next 10 years will inform how the next several hundred years are going to go. And with that, I am going to say thank you very much and ask Bill if there's any questions. Are there any questions, Bill? How are we doing?
There are not any questions. So I encourage you guys again to go to the chat feature and put in any questions you have. The chat feature is at the bottom of the Zoom screen if you haven't used it yet.
That was fun. It is 8:20. I'm going to open this window here. It's hot in here. I'm ready for a beer. Are you guys all ready for a beer? Should we head on down to the bar? I wish we could all hang out. But anyway, I appreciate and I hope that I presented myself tonight with an air of knowledge. You know, I write these big sprawling books on nature. It would be weird if I didn't have big opinions. I'm trying to figure it out for myself too, right? We are in this together. I never want to come off as some sort of academic expert with secret knowledge, right? I mean, you can find all of my maps at good old websites like USGS or US Forest Service, Department of Energy, or NOAA, or whatever. They're all there, but they're usually 7 or 10 clicks in, pretty low res, and they're not for you. They're usually for research scientists talking to research scientists. You know, I believe that this empowerment and activation of our citizenry towards geographic literacy is one of the best tools we've got. We've got to know what is out there to protect. People protect what they love. People love what they know and they understand.
Okay, we do have some questions that have come up.
Okay.
First one, can you talk a little bit about the current beaver population in California? You mentioned beavers.
Yeah. There are a number of different reintroduction programs going on around the state. There's the Ecology Center in Occidental is all about beaver habitat in the North Bay, and we've got Nature Conservancy is doing a bunch of work too. In fact, I was on Open Road. Do you know Open Road with Doug McConnell? And we went up to Lassen.
Oh, the
and
TV show.
The TV show, yeah, you'll have to check it out. We were talking about meadow restoration, right? And the nature on the Nature Conservancy right underneath in the Northern Sierra there. And what they have installed is Beaver Analogs, which is an interesting idea where you have like, you study the technology that is the beaver dam, and then you build a thing that does, in theory, the same thing that the beaver lodge does, in hopes that the beaver will then come back, or that what that does then is it size up the water course, right, and allows willow and alder to actually grow for food, then for prime the habitat for reintroduction of the species into that ecosystem once it's calmed down, perhaps after degradation from so many decades of livestock trampling or whatnot, that you then have give it a fighting chance, set it up for success, right? So you begin to spark these systems, and I know that is happening across the state, from Crescent City all the way down to the Central Coast. I'm not aware of any stuff happening down in Ojai, but I think there is actually some stuff happening on the Santa Clara River as far as that goes too, and in its relationship to some of our rare, critically endangered salmon subspecies, like the steelhead that is an ecologically significant unit down there.
Okay, next question. Is planting trees in certain areas of California useful?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, it depends. It depends on what is the plan, right? Restoration science is fascinating, and that habitat restoration is complex and very interesting. It involves, for example, if you're taking out invasive species and setting up native species within the context of ancestral associations, then we're talking about a good strategy here, right? Then we're talking about and of course there, I mean, if we're, I don't even know what we're talking about here. We've got urban environments where just our arboreal cover is a good way to go to just reduce the temperature in general, and just to add to the betterment of everyone. But as far as like carbon sequestration, I will stress what I stressed earlier in the talk, was that it's not more trees that we need, it is healthier forests.
Okay, great. Next one. Do you include oak woodlands in the forests that are the most significant in California?
Oh, I do. You know, I could write an essay on all these questions. These are really brilliant and beautiful questions. Our oak forests our oak woodlands are under siege right now. We've got big problems with how namely how oak woodlands interact with invasive grasses. Over the past 100 years that invasive grasses have overtaken the native grass systems. Native grasses tend to make their roots really deep, while invasive grasses can go really short. These Eurasian grasses that love to burn every year, right? And so the blue oak, Quercus douglasii, one of our gorgeous endemic species here. Blue oaks don't exist anywhere in the world except mostly within the Central Valley, or on that sort of former ring of about 500 to 1,500 feet in elevation around the Central Valley. The blue oak is not really reproducing because its seedlings have very shallow roots, and all the water is being used by this invasive grass, right? Where over the past several hundred years that species has evolved here, it's evolved with grasses that take their water from at a different depth than what these new grasses are taking. So we're starving the oak trees, and that's just one of many problems, including livestock and a generally the temperature of the valley increasing is disruptive to the ecosystem as well.
Okay, next question. I've heard a lot of promotion of cattle grazing for forest and grassland health. Do you have any?
Yeah. Right. Well, remember I was talking about all those species of herbaceous mammal that used to herbivorous mammal, I should say. Herbivorous mammal, not herbaceous mammal. That'd be a really strange creature. Herbivorous mammal that lived here at time of contact, so many thousands and thousands of years ago. Well, they had a role to play, those big creatures, and it turns out, in fact, I'm going to be having a talk very soon with an ecologist named Nate Chisholm about he's also a cowboy, and he has some very interesting ideas about the way that a well-tended herd of cows is the hoofed mammal that he's dealing with, moved and circulated throughout their pasture at given seasons can actually work not only to improve health of the steppe or savanna, if you will, but work to stabilize the soil health, and work at carbon sequestration, which is a fascinating idea. Now, what we do know, though, is that within our forested lands, it's a different matter altogether. And there's a lengthy essay within my book, The Forests of California, on cattle policy within forested lands, and all of its deleterious effects. There's a lot of them, and they need to be understood well to have an opinion. But when it comes down to on the human side of things, I'm a meat eater. But I do not eat meat that I do not know where it came from. I like to know what ranch it is. I even like to know the practices of the rancher. That's the important part. It's okay to pay for your meat. Just do that and make sure and support that. And supporting that is actually is in my estimation and in my heart a piece of the unfolding circular economy that I was describing before.
And I think this next question is, you've pretty much just answered it, but it introduces the term regenerative agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you think regenerative agriculture has potential?
Oh yeah, it has to. We are going to
mitigate climate change.
To mitigate climate change, that's one possibility. But again, it's not because we can do it. It's because we have to do it. We're going to be changing. I don't want to be doom and gloom, but as I said before, I'm not gonna pull my punches in saying that the next several decades are going to be tough. In the next several years, when we see weeks long temperatures of 120 degrees or more in the Central Valley, which is on its way. We are changing how we think about agriculture in California. We're going to be thinking about what is worth what, and we're going to be changing the whole system of food delivery in this state, what we're growing. Right now, we've got the Thirsty Four. We've got alfalfa, we've got rice, we've got the stone fruit, which is, the pistachios and not stone fruit, the pistachios and the almonds and the pomegranates and whatnot. And we have the cotton. There's still 300,000 acres of cotton grown in the Central Valley. That's down from 4 million acres at 1920, 1930, 1940 when they built Pine Flat Dam, but it's still being grown there. One of the most thirsty crops there is.
Yeah, I was surprised to see cotton coming back. I thought it was gone.
Oh, I know. In a place that historically, the Central Valley only gets 13 inches of rain a year. I mean, on the average. It takes 20 inches at least to grow something without irrigation. So the whole thing is dependent on choking all the rivers for all their worth. And I am not here to tell a farmer how to farm. And I feel and I understand and I empathize with the tradition of farming in the Central Valley. But I'm also really trying to engage this conversation of how we can transform our society to the greater profit of us all. And I think there's solutions on the table to do that, and it doesn't require putting all the farmers out of work. And hasn't climate change already kind of done that?
Okay, can you suggest any other books to read?
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Books to read. Oh yes. Okay, well let me just, what have I got on my desk right now? Oh, one of the projects that I'm so excited about is working with Adina Marinlander. She wrote this book called Corridor Ecology, and she also wrote the California Naturalist Handbook. I've got that around here somewhere. But I'm working with her. I just turned in the illustrations today for the next project, which is a certification program with the University of California at Berkeley to start awarding climate stewardship certification status to individuals across the state. Next year, beginning next year, you will be able to go through a course and become a certified climate steward of California. And I hope everyone listening to the sound of my voice will go get that book, sign up for that course, and get on with it, because we've got that to do.
You put in a little plug. That's a good segue. Tuleyome also does a certified California naturalist class.
Oh yeah, you totally do, of course.
And it's also through the UCANR, same as the.
Wonderful. Yeah, I've got lots of books. I'm always reading books. Oh, let's see. If you're interested in all I was talking about with the mycorrhizal life and all of that revolutionary science that's coming out, pick up a copy of Merlin Sheldrake's new book, Entangled Life. It's a fascinating read that questions the nature of taxonomic biology. It's really good. If you're looking to think more about how catastrophic success might work, The Future Earth by Eric Holthaus is a fantastic read as well. I like idiosyncratic truths in the world. This is published by Heyday Books, my publisher as well. This is a really interesting book. Unlikely Ally: How the Military Fights Climate Change and Protects the Environment. The military has many millions of acres of inholdings across California. And you know who follows the laws? The military. They have built what are in effect enormous swaths of de facto wilderness, where populations of so many different kinds of endangered animals are thriving under their stewardship. And not to mention that they are all have incredibly resilient grids of energy production that they're actually legally not allowed to give to the state of California, which is a weird thing that might change. We'll see. We're going to change and question everything. It's a time of great transformation, my friends. Enjoy it and don't be afraid.
Okay, a couple more questions.
Okay.
So can you address the balance between, excuse me, the balance between clearing land for fire prevention and damaging habitat for wildlife?
Clearing land for fire prevention. Okay, we don't do that. What we do is we employ thinning as one of the tools for fire resiliency within a given area. Okay, so mechanical thinning is one of the tools. We also are way behind schedule with prescriptive fire techniques, where we should be doing upwards of 500,000 acres every couple of years, but now we're just doing like 30 or 40,000 acres a year, and so we're way behind schedule on that. And we have all of these other tools as well. And you know, I think that there's so many interesting tools out there for if you want to learn how to do it for the private homeowner to engage their forest. You know, I mean, there's different scales, right? There's different scales of whatever we're talking about. We're talking about the individual scale, we're talking about the regional scale, we're talking about the national scale, we're talking about the global scale, right? All of these different ways. Ultimately, I would like to put another idiosyncratic truth out there. It's not about just thinning the forest for fire prevention. What we're doing is we're imagining healthy forests across the board. And fire is a part of that. Fire is a tool. Fire is a gift. In every single arboreal fire regime, naturalized fire cycle across California, we're dealing with everything needs to burn once every 20, 30, 40, maybe 50 years. Now, chaparral is a little bit different. There's a lot of talk about how chaparral, you know, does or doesn't burn. A lot of contention there among ecologists, but among trees, there isn't. High intensity, low severity fires need to come through regularly. So being forewarned is being forearmed. Now that we know that, now that we finally know that, after 90 years of fire suppression policy, we can get on with that business, and we can realize how things happened before colonization. We imagined that 4 to 5 million acres of forest burned every year. Yeah, that's a lot of that's smoky skies, but it's not like what we were talking about before, where you have these incredible conflagrations, these catastrophic moments where, you know, 3 million acres burn in 3 weeks. You know, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, as all things, density and ratio and proportion. So you have, in that kind of pre-colonial regime where you have 5 million acres burning every year, they're happening in units of about 500 acres apiece, okay? Little fires everywhere with maybe an intense burn zone of 10 to 20 acres, right? That's what we're talking about. Not fires that are 350,000 acres with an intense burn zone of 75,000 acres. That's not a healthy fire regime at all, and that's not good fire on the land. That is feral fire, and that's the reckoning we're waking up to now, and the opportunity that we have to monitor, study, and assist the reapplication of a normalized adaptive cycle within that habitat type.
Now, can you clarify for everybody the difference between intensity and severity when it comes to
Sure. Intensity is a measure. Yeah, this is how fire ecologists talk about the nature of fire, and intensity is the measure of energy output, where severity is the measure of change within the environment that the fire affects. Okay, so like when you have all these invasive plants, right? You have these plants from Eurasia that are designed to propagate with fire every year. You know, I mean, that's how the steppe burns in Siberia. You know, and that's where all the, you know, and that's where all of the European grasses, what humans do. They bring their cows, and the cows bring all of the grasses everywhere. When you have fire every year, or catastrophic fire like this, you risk not undergoing the normal processes of succession within the arboreal ecosystem that lead to environment or forest succession. You threaten environmental conversion right? Where forests eventually can't fight that and go away and become grasslands. And that is, that's going to be a challenge in the years to come as we are losing our resiliency because of these crowded, dense, thirsty, infirmed, simplified, fragmented forests across our state. We will work to mimic in a very fast way what the services that an old growth forest might give, and that is super fun science. I mean, it's super exciting because we understand that the science is here. Like, it's not like it's a big mystery. It's just a matter of putting ourselves to work. Let's put all that money, all those billions of dollars we spend fighting the fires, in front of the fires. Let's get our young people, let's build a new industry. There's so much good work to be done. It's just like, we can interact with the forest, we can live there, and we can interact with fire. Fine. You know, I don't mean to sound exasperated. I think that there is so many, I think that we're actually getting a lot of great leadership from Sacramento right now. I think that there's a lot of really excellent ideas coming out from Wade Crowfoot and his boss, Mr. Newsom, and they've got some wonderful ideas exactly about this kind of stuff, how we get to work, how we make jobs, and we restore our forests at the same time.
Do you know how to connect? Do you know how private landowners can connect with California tribes that have traditional knowledge about the use of fire for land management?
I don't have a lot of experience with that. I know that your local land trust probably does. And I would also recommend subscribing to News from Native California by Heyday Books, you know, my publisher again. Apparently I'm plugging them too.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, there's a lot of resources there. And yeah, check out the whole portfolio of published works by Heyday Books. There's a lot of intimate knowledge of contemporary indigenous cultures that I am not yet fully engaged with, you know. But that's part of the reason why I'm going to be walking the state in 2024. Like I opened this whole evening with, like, I really want to reach out to and learn. You know, we've all got so much to learn, you know, and I just want to give it all away, you know, and learn and be and listen as much as possible.
Okay, last question. What are the best sources of information about how to improve the health of Northern California ecosystems such as mixed oak manzanita woodlands and chaparral?
The best sources of information, the best sources,
to improve the health.
Right. Well, to improve the health. Well, there are, I am so impressed with the way over the past 20 years that the land trust movement has matured across California. What we are seeing now is a grassroots systems of communities that are largely apolitical in nature. These organizations are not talking about who you think should be, you know, whatever's happening in Washington. You know, this is about people coming together to care for a particular grove of redwoods or a particular, you know, watershed. And what is happening now with the brilliant invention of the conservation easement, right, where this brilliant balance between public and private interest to preserve a piece of habitat is now put in management through a land trust system, is we're finding that they're protecting a lot of this connective tissue for wildlife and habitat corridors across the state between wild spaces. So it's not just about like having like this space and this space protected. You have to have the sinew of circulation for communities, living communities to thrive. And so I would go check out your local land trust and talk with them about the resources, exactly what you're talking about, because I would love to say that there's some sort of like, you know, centralized thing, but as good as the government thinks that it is, there isn't. It is, California is as diverse, as large, and as complex as any living network, I dare to say, in the universe. Its natural systems of life rival the human mind or any galactic feature in both complexity and beauty and depth. It might be in the near future we come to recognize it itself as being analogous, at least, to a body with recognizably physiological anatomy, and we then are its children, and might we finally stop being tourists in this place and dig in and take responsibility for this, our home, for the next several dozen generations to come.
Okay, that was a great thought to end on. Thank you very much, Obi.
Hey, Bill, thank you so much for having me. And thank you all for hanging out tonight. This has been super fun. And I really wish that I was like not experiencing all this beautiful virtual energy and that it was like really real and I could, you know, hug you and sign your books and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, thus is this strange year 2020. But please go get the book. If you haven't got the book yet, go to heydaybooks.com and buy one. I am pretty severely back ordered. You can order one directly through me at californiafieldatlas.com. But I am, look, it's about a month out. I gotta say, because I wrapped them all up myself. And my poor girlfriend, you heard me earlier, getting the dog toy out of her, but she's doing a lot of the wrapping anyway. Tomorrow morning, I'm doing a hike in the Sierra Nevada through some burned lands, and I'm going to be discussing a lot of what we were discussing here tonight, but in a totally different way, because I never know exactly what I'm going to end up talking about. And you can go to walkwithobi.eventbrite.com to get tickets to that tomorrow morning. So I'm inviting you to go on a hike with me tomorrow if you don't have anything going on 11 a.m. and you want to listen to more of this kind of stuff and, you know, actually see trees and stuff on your monitor instead of my paintings. And that's a good thing to do. But anyway, thanks a lot, Bill, for having me. I had a great time.
So for the people that are still here, I just wanted to make it sure everybody knows we did record this evening, and I will be sending out a link to the recording next week to everybody that registered, and I'll include links to how to buy the book, Obi's email address, other stuff I can think of that's relevant. So thanks again, Obi. Oh, and also, you guys, next month is another Tuleyome lecture. We're going to be talking about turtles. We're going to have
great.
So that will be fun.
Oh, I love turtles. All right. Have a great night.
Thanks.
See you later.
Good night.
Bye. Be well. Be safe.